Thank you guys for joining us today. More than likely, you can hear me all over there, correct? You guys are good? Okay. Um, as you know, I'm Kenneth L. Herman Jr., your Chief HR Officer, and we are glad to be able to offer you an opportunity to hear from a dynamic speaker today. This speaker series is something new, something that we're trying to experiment with within the county, where we bring speakers in to talk about various topics. You guys heard us. We did educational and student loan forgiveness a year ago. We did financial health. So now this one is on resiliency. But before I begin, I must say, if you talk about perfect timing for a resiliency conversation, is today. I guess you all saw the new that we are under some cyber attack, and that's why we've been struggling with our IT issues and trying to get our citizens served. But nonetheless, we are resilient in making sure that the core services are done. I know most of you guys are happy that we made payroll, and we're going to make.
That was me, Kenneth. That was me. I
And
think.
we're going to make payroll again next week with your cola. We're on track for that. So, and that could not be done without having some dynamic team members. So, can't take all the credit. It's really and truly the hardworking staff in the HR department, specifically HR DNA, led by Alicia Perkins and her team, making that happen. Also, it's an HR event, so there's the business side and then there's the entertainment side. And you guys should know by now, whenever I'm doing something, I always have a little something in my pocket, right? I always have a little something in my pocket, right? So the little something that I was giving away today was for individuals who sat in the VIP section without telling them they needed to sit in the VIP section. So that's why I told the second row over here, they got so close. So those individuals who sat in the VIP, Jackie and Coretta, you guys are getting 1 day of administrative leave on behalf of me.
Wow, that's awesome.
So, so again, when you come to our Herman event, a chief HR officer event, there's always something special. It makes sense to sit in the front because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen. All right, so that being said, let me get right to why we're all here. I'll read the introduction and bring Tehran up to tell you guys a little bit more about himself and resiliency and his story, and hopefully you'll learn a little bit more about him in that process. Jackie, don't let me forget that I gave you administrative leave. I know.
Good morning.
All right, so this is just a short bio about Tehran. At the tender age of 6, Tehran Jackson faced the challenge of a slight stutter and difficulty pronouncing S sounds, leading him to a speech class. This early hurdle didn't define him, instead it set the stage for a remarkable transformation. From the rural landscape of Alabama to commanding stages worldwide, Tehran's journey is a testament to the power of resiliency and the unexpected path life takes us on. Once an inspiring engineer, life's curveballs unveiled his true calling, inspiring others through his story of adversity, transformation, and triumph. As a best-selling author, resiliency coach, and dynamic speaker, Tehran shares the message that resiliency isn't just a reaction, it's a choice. His life work, underscored by his remarkable achievements and profound impact on those he touches, embodies the spirit of overcoming and thriving. He sounds like a Fulton County employee, right? So, Fulton County, welcome. And let's welcome the man whose life is a beacon of hope and transformation, Tehran Jackson. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kenneth. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you all. Good morning, everybody, Fulton County. How are you guys doing today? That's good. Did everybody enjoy Valentine's Day yesterday? You did? Good. You know, it's a good feeling to be able to celebrate a day of love and be with somebody that you truly love. Show of hands, who here has been in love with somebody before? Okay? That's not everybody. I would think everybody would have been in love with somebody at some point. But it's great for those of you who had the opportunity to love before to be able to have that experience. For those of you who've been in love, how many of you have been able to go on vacation and spend time with that person that you love? Okay, great, great. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story today, this morning, and I'm hoping this mic stays working where you all can hear me and see me clearly. I'm going to tell you about a story of love. I'm going to tell you guys about a story where I was in love and take you guys back. Back in 2018, I was in love with my wife, Malika, and we were getting ready to celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary. Can you believe that? 15 years together. And we actually liked each other still. It wasn't just love, but we actually liked each other. And we were going through this time where we were both very, very busy with our lives. She was moving up in the ranks as a HR director for another company, but she was a director, and she was in a position where she was having to travel back and forth to Chicago every week. And in the midst of that, I was an engineering manager for a small company out in Alpharetta, and I was scheduling my travel around her time. So it seemed like we were both very busy, both having to go through a lot of different things. And in the middle of it was our son, Cameron, who was 12 years old at the time. Now, as we were going through this period, we decided we wanted to do something for our anniversary that would be special, and that we would actually take a trip. People go on trips all the time, and what we decided we were going to do was take a trip and go to the Bahamas for what was supposed to be 5 wonderful days in paradise. So we had planned this trip, and the day before that trip, I got in the car, put Cameron in the back seat, and we drove up to Nashville, Tennessee, because that's where his aunt and uncle lived, and he was going to stay with them for those 5 days while we were gone. And as I got ready to drop Cam off, I said, son, don't worry, Mom and I are about to have a great time, and I'll be back in 1 week to pick you up. Cam was like, Dad, go have a good time. You and Mom need this. And I left there thinking to myself that, okay, I get it. I understand what it is. Dropping him off with his aunt and uncle. He's going to get to play with his cousins, terrorize their dog, eat ice cream late at night, do all these things that he wouldn't get to do if he was at home. So he was looking at it as a bit of freedom while we were gone. But I left him there and left him with the impression that, don't worry, I'll be back in 1 week to pick you up. So I came back to Atlanta. The next morning, Malika and I, we decided we were going to go ahead and get ready. It was time for our trip. So we get up, have our bags packed, go to the airport, fly to the Bahamas, get there. You could tell a sudden release by knowing that you're away from everything. The stresses of the job weren't bothering us anymore. We were relaxed. We were looking forward to this time to connect and really spend time with each other over these couple of days. We get there on a Thursday afternoon. First 2 days were great. Time at the beach, got to have a couple of fruity drinks, some time at the pool. And if you can see the screen, this was Malika. This is my wife, Malika. And one of the things that she had done on vacation the year before was she liked to go swimming with these animals, okay? I wasn't a big fan of this, but she went on a girls' trip and got to go swim with the dolphins. So she said one of the things that she really wanted to do while we were in the Bahamas was go swim with the pigs. Now, I didn't know anything about this swimming with the pigs, but I understand it's an attraction. It's what people do. So on the third day that we were there, we were getting ready to go on a trip. This was us right before that trip getting ready to go on this excursion where we were going to go swim with the pigs. So we booked the trip, wake up at 6:30 in the morning, all excited. Go to breakfast at the resort. Breakfast was great. 7:30, we're at the edge of the resort. We're waiting for a bus to come pick us up and take us to the marina. 8 o'clock, bus comes. It's about 15 or 20 couples that are getting on this bus, and we're headed to where we're all going to enjoy this adventurous day. 8:45, we get to the marina. We had to stop at a couple of other resorts along the way, but now you got a full bus of people who are going down to this marina and going to be able to have this fun opportunity to have this excursion while they're on vacation. People do this all the time. So we get there, and there's two options. You can either spend the full day, 8 hours on the excursion for one trip, or you can spend 4 hours and go on a half-day excursion on the other trip. So we get there, and Malika and I, we started talking about what we're going to do that day. And I started thinking that we're on vacation. One of the things I wanted to do was go golfing. So I was like, let's do this half-day trip so I can go back and do that later this afternoon. And Malika said, yeah, okay, let's do that. She had some things she wanted to do at the resort. And so we decided to go on the half-day trip. So we walked down the pier, and on the left side is the boat for the half-day trip. On the right side is the boat for the full-day trip. We get on the boat for the half-day trip. It's 9 o'clock. We're about to take off. We take off. I remember sitting on the boat, got my right arm over Malika, and I'm thinking and I'm looking, and it's a perfect day. Weather is great. You can smell the sea from the ocean. Everything seems wonderful. And at 9:05, my life changed forever. Watch this.
They met nearly 2 decades ago while in college at Tennessee State University. She was an AKA with the megawatt smile, beautiful heart, and magnetic personality. He's a Kappa, a humble guy, weak soul who prided himself on his study habits. They fell in love immediately after meeting at a party, married years later, and had a son, Cameron. Their friends and family described their marriage as the perfect union between two strong, smart, and God-fearing people. Their race and Lady Jackson was undeniably the envy of most couples.
So it seems like the sound just cut out there.
But on June 30th, Malika died while the two were celebrating their 15th wedding anniversary while vacationing in the Bahamas. She was 39. These are pictures of the duo taken the day before tragedy struck. They were enjoying a romantic getaway when the engine of the tour boat they were on suddenly exploded off the coast of Izuma. 10 American tourists were on board the 40-foot chartered boat at the time of the incident. Iran lost his leg, his collarbone, and fractured his pelvis and spine, suffered second-degree burns, and had his left shoulder dislocated. Malika, who was sitting where the engine exploded, was killed. And now Tyran, whose doctors say is a walking miracle, is forced to be a single father. And while his wife is gone, these pictures, memories of their son, are all reminders of the love that was and will forever live inside of his soul.
Hey, Benny, you can go ahead and skip it. So look, life can throw you curveballs when you least expect it. At 9:08, I woke up. I woke up face down on the surface of that burning boat. I woke up because I was knocked unconscious, and my right leg was literally on fire. Fellas, for those of you who cook out barbecue, you know how when you put those charcoals on the grill and you get that fire burning, and you try to test it to make sure it's just right, so you put your hand over it to see how hot it is? That's how my leg was feeling. My right thigh was literally burning from flames that were coming off of that explosion. I'm laying face down on my stomach. I glance down at my left leg, and I see my ankle bone. I see blood gushing out. I don't know what's happened. I'm in shock. I literally try to push myself up. And as I push myself up, I crumble. I try to push myself up again. I crumble again. I didn't know it at the time, but I had a fractured collarbone, bruised ribs, fractured vertebrae, fractured pelvis, third-degree burns on my right leg, a broken foot. And as I said, I'm seeing all this blood gushing out from my leg. The only thing that I could do was to reach my right arm out, put my fingertips in the ridges on the surface of that boat, and try to drag myself. I dragged myself about 4 or 5 feet until I passed out again. Now, I don't know if you noticed in that video, there was a second boat that I talked about, the ones that were going on the 8-hour trip. Passengers from that boat actually risked themselves to get in the water. Now, the water was still fairly shallow, and they came over and they dragged me off of the boat and got me to their boat before the second fuel tank exploded. Had I been on that boat for another 2 minutes, I wouldn't be here today. Now, as I was blown in one direction and still on the boat, Malika and one other passenger were blown into a different direction, and they were out into the ocean, into the sea. There was another boat that happened to be running around at that time, and they actually picked her and the other young lady up and took them to shore. When I finally got back to shore, there was no ambulance. There was nothing. I had to sit there and wait. Luckily, there was a person who was just passing by who had a pickup truck and a piece of plywood. They put me on a piece of plywood on the back of a pickup truck, and I had the bumpiest ride you could ever imagine through the backwoods of Bahamas trying to get to this clinic, trying to figure out what happened. After what seemed like an eternity, they get me to that clinic. And as they put me on the stretcher and wheel me in, that's the first time I hear Malika. I hear her moans, her agony, her suffering, and I can't do anything about it. As I lay there, I'm trying to keep myself as still as possible. I'm trying to pray. I'm trying to understand what happened, why this had to happen to us. And there's one doctor at this clinic. And after what seemed like forever, he finally came over to me. And my first question to him is, "How is my wife?" The doctor told me, "We're going to send you and this one other passenger to the good hospital, and that Malika will come later." So I'm sitting there a little bit reassured. I'm thinking to myself, okay, she must not be messed up as bad as I am, even though I haven't talked to her, even though I haven't heard anything but her screams and her yell in agony. But I get to see her later. So they put me back on the stretcher, wheel me out, put me on an ambulance, take me to the air ambulance, fly me to Nassau where the good hospital is, get me into the emergency room. And before I know it, I'm getting prepared to go into surgery. They just tried to wrap up what was left of my left foot at the time and said, "We'll take care of that later." So I wake up 5 hours later from surgery in ICU, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, Malika's got to be here by now. So as I'm in there, the nurse, she leaves the room and says she's going to go get the doctors. So as soon as she does, there's 2 doctors that walk into the room. And I asked them the most obvious question you could imagine. "Where's my wife? Where's Malika?" The 2 doctors, they look at each other confused, and they leave the room. And I'm thinking to myself, she should be here by now. They told me she was going to be here at the clinic before. She should be here by now. After about 3 minutes, the 2 doctors come back in, and they look at me. They say, "Mr. Jackson, we hate to inform you, but your wife didn't make it." Now, I'm an eternal optimist. I'm a positive person. I'm thinking to myself, my wife didn't make it. What you mean is she hasn't made it here yet. Because they told me at the other hospital that she was going to be here and that she should be here by now. So they must have had a problem with the airplane. They must have to refuel it. They must have to do something else with it. But she's still on her way here, right? No, Mr. Jackson. She died at that clinic. We didn't want you to know before having to go into surgery, before going into everything else. So here I am, still in shock of what happened, physically hurt and broken, trying to process what's going on. And what was supposed to be one of the most menacing, most adventurous, most fun times that I was having with my wife is now the worst experience of my life. I cried myself to sleep that night, still not knowing what's really happening. The next morning, I wake up and I realize I have to do something that I never imagined having to do. You remember that 12-year-old boy I said I left with his aunt and uncle? Well, I felt the need that I had to break the news to him. So I had to get on the phone And while I'm still suffering, still going through tremendous pain physically and still not understanding what's going on, I have to tell them over the phone, Cam, I got some bad news. Mom and Dad were in an accident, and your mom's never coming home again. Dad, no, quit playing. To have to hear him scream on the other end and tell him that, son, we're going to be all right. That God has a plan, and Malika, she's going to heaven, and that this was supposed to happen. Now, I'm lying to myself because I'm still trying to figure out what's going on, but I'm thinking to myself, I just had to break the heart of our 12-year-old son and tell him that the only woman who's ever been close to is never coming back. Later that day, I found myself laying in the bed, and I'm feeling worse and worse and worse. Well, when they put me into surgery, what they did was try to reattach what was left of my left foot to my left leg. And my foot had gotten infected. An infection was starting to grow through my body. So as I'm laying there, I'm looking at the EKG monitor over my head, and I find myself seeing my vitals getting worse. And as I'm laying there, my vitals start to go from green to yellow to red. And I'm coming to grips with the fact that the next time I close my eyes was going to be the last time I closed my eyes. And I was trying to reason and rationalize, okay, what did Malika and I ever do to deserve this? You've already taken her. I've had to break my son's heart and tell him she's not coming back, and I'm telling him that I'm going to be okay. And now I'm about to come to grips with the fact that I'm about to die as well, and my son is going to be without both of his parents on what was supposed to be a celebration of our time together. As I said, I did not think I was going to wake up that next day. I'm up here trying to rationalize with God. I'm in the truest state of despair, going through moments in my life where I should have made better decisions in certain elements of that I ran across, and thinking to myself that this is it. Now, I did wake up that next morning, and there were a lot of things that were happening in the background, a lot of things that I wasn't fully aware of. There was a group that was trying to take me away from the Bahamas and send me to a level 1 trauma unit in Florida, and they were trying to get me out the country. In the Bahamas, all they were doing were giving me pain medication. They were watching me die. But somehow they were able to get me out that next morning, get me to a level 1 trauma unit in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And by then, my sister and my mom had gotten to Florida, and the doctors there said that we got to do whatever we can to make sure that he still survives. And so I go into emergency surgery again, and I wake up, and I see my left leg missing below the knee. They had to stop the infection from getting further and further in my body. Over the course of the next several days, I went through 8 surgeries in 4 days to start putting together all those other pieces that I talked about earlier, my broken right foot, my fractured collarbone, my broken fractured pelvis. And then the next day was when things were starting finally to process for me, and I'm trying to come into the realization that I'm still going to be alive. And I'm having this conversation with God, and I'm talking to him and trying to understand what really happened. And he said a message that was very clear to me. First, he told me that it was time for Malika to come home, that she had did everything that she needed to do while she was here on earth, and that she was going to be Cameron and my angel moving forward. He told me that if he wanted to, he could have taken me when that boat exploded. He could have taken me when my vitals went from green to yellow to red in that hospital. He could have taken me when I went through all those surgeries in one day because I was still very unstable. But he kept me here. He kept me here for a reason. He told me that the obstacles that I've overcome to this point were nothing compared to the obstacles that I was still going to have to face. He told me to be resilient. To be resilient. He said that I wasn't going to go back to the life that I had. What I was doing as an engineer was not where my future was going to take me. That there was a different path, and that was going to become apparently clear as I moved forward. But I had a choice. I could either just survive or I could thrive. And for me to thrive, I had to understand that I had to make the decision to be resilient. And so with that said, one other thing that stayed abundantly clear was, what did it mean to be resilient? Now, I didn't fully know this at the time, but what stuck was, what is resilience? Well, resilience is not about regaining what was lost. It's about reshaping what still remains. And it's what we do with what still remains that dictates our life's future. I had to understand that by being resilient, I was going to have control of what happens in the future, regardless of the obstacles, regardless of the challenges that we're facing, regardless of the things that are in our path that we think are going to keep us from being able to do what we need to do. Fulton County, this is an interesting time because you guys are going through an obstacle right now here. The cyber attacks, everything that we don't see, that it can throw us in a different direction, a different path. We have a choice to make. And I had to make that choice to choose to be resilient. Just like you all have a choice to make in being resilient when things come in your life and you don't know how you're going to overcome it. Resilience is all about how you deal with the obstacles, the challenges, the issues that come up in your life and deal with those breakdowns. But not just deal with the breakdowns. It's about finding the ways to cope with. What strategies are you implementing? And how are you using these things to create positive growth in your life? Because we all going to have problems. We all going to go through things. The question is, how long are you going to let those things hold you down and keep you from doing what you need to do with your life? So with that, I went from this state of being broken physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, to having to start the process of being put back together. And so what I'm going to share with you guys today is a short roadmap. And on this roadmap, I talk about certain elements that can make you more resilient. Certain things that you can do when you have the obstacles that you run into to be able to figure out how you're going to move forward, how you're going to move forward powerfully and get past it and keep moving and actually come out the other side being better versions of yourself. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on this today, but I want to go through this. If you can take one of these principles and apply it to your life, you'll find yourself becoming more resilient. And as you become more resilient, you'll be able to withstand the adversity when it comes up in your way. So the first thing I want to talk about is the R in this roadmap. The R stands for restoration. What does it mean to be restored? Well, restored is that process of healing, of being able to move forward. But sometimes when bad things happen to us, we need to be able to pause. We need to take a break. We need to assess where we are before we do anything. I take you guys back to where I was. This was about 2.5 weeks after the accident. I'm at the hospital in Florida, and it's time for me to leave. Now, as I'm getting ready to leave, as I'm talking to the doctors, and they're telling me and my family that, okay, we need him to go to a rehab center to start to heal, to start that process, because at that point in time, I'm missing my left leg, obviously. My right foot is in a cast. I got a back brace on. I got my shoulder in a sling. But I'm thinking that I need to be around people constantly to be able to help me recover. So as they were getting ready to discharge me, I thought to myself, well, maybe I need to go to a rehab center in Nashville. A lot of my family was based there. I was thinking, okay, Vanderbilt University, they got a great rehab center. Let's reach out to them and see if they'll accept me. The doctors from the hospital in Florida try to contact them. And after giving them all the information, I was denied. I'm trying to understand. I was just in this horrific accident. Don't they want to help me? But they didn't. Okay, well, let's try to get a hospital or a rehab center close to where my mom lives in Alabama. So we try to go to UAB, get them to pick me up and allow me to do rehab there to start to recover. Same thing. The doctors that reach out to the ones at UAB come back denied. I'm thinking to myself, why did they deny me? Why aren't they willing to accept me? Well, they said he needed to have 2 functional limbs. And since the only thing that I had was my right arm that wasn't broken or in a sling or in a cast, they wouldn't take me. So after talking to the doctors, talking with my family, what they said is I needed to rest. I needed to go somewhere where I couldn't do anything for a period of time. So that led to me actually going back to Nashville, living with my sister for 6 weeks while I started this healing process. And even though I didn't realize it at the time, taking that break from having to go through what was happening at the hospital, just being able to be in a comfortable environment, being able to think through and process what had happened, trying to start this place of emotionally understanding what I needed to do in order to recover. It was actually the best thing for me. Now, it was hard for me to get used to having to be pushed around in a wheelchair all the time and not being able to get up and move as I wanted to. But getting that level of restoration was really the first key, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally for me to be able to get back to where I needed to be. Here you can see a picture of my son. This was one of the times where we actually got to be together after the accident, where I was able to be at a peaceful place when we got back together and connected. Sometimes you need to understand the energy from the people, and being able to take the break and really assess where you are is critical for you to be able to move and take the proper steps forward once you're facing some challenge. So this was a piece of my journey from restoration, but whenever you're broken, you need to heal. And until you start that healing process, it's going to be hard for you to fully recover. So keep that in mind as we start moving through this roadmap of resilience. That piece of restoration is critical, because restoration, knowing when to rest, is how the resilience increases. So keep that in mind, your restoration first. The next key point in this roadmap to resilience is, and this is a question for you. In what ways and where do you need restoration in your life? Think about that. I don't know how many of us in here would admit it, but we're all broken in some way. And we need to take a look at how we're going to start to heal from that. So ask yourself, what can I do to start restoring the broken pieces of my life? And where do I need to take that pause before I move forward? The next part of this roadmap to resilience is your obsession. What are you obsessed with? Are you obsessed and have your goals, your focus? Are you able to look at something in a place where you are, it's the most important thing in your life at that moment? Now, I'll take you to a place where it's probably about a month after the accident. There were physical trainers and occupational therapists that were coming by my sister's house every other day. And what they were doing were they were working with me physically and making me do different things. And so I remember being in a situation where I had to take a 2-pound weight and I had to do this for 10 minutes and then stop and do it again. Now, at that point in time, my shoulder was in a sling. And as much as I didn't realize it, I realized that I had to be obsessed with doing these things that I didn't want to do, even though I didn't feel like doing it, if I wanted to get back to a place where I could at least physically be functional. Think about the things in your life that you really know you have to make happen, the things that are most important to you. What goals do you have, and where do you have that laser-like focus? If you don't have that laser-like focus in order to make something come to reality, it's going to be harder for you to overcome those obstacles. You got to see it as such. So if you got that drive, if you got that motivation, if you know what you're obsessed with, then that's going to help you get closer towards meeting the success and being resilient and overcome the obstacles in your life. So I want to ask you, this was a situation as I was making progress. I don't know if we can play that, but by being obsessed, and I know it doesn't seem like much, but these were my first steps on crutches. And to go from a place where you are totally helpless to be able to get to a place where you can move seemed like the biggest win. But I had to do what I needed to in order to start the process of getting there. So don't worry about it, Vinny. What this was me actually taking my first steps. And what I wanted to show you guys was the obsession towards realizing that my physical recovery was going to be the most critical key for me to be able to be there for my son, was what drove me. So my question to you all is, what are you truly passionate about? What is really driving you? What is really pushing you? And what goals do you have in your life, or do you need to identify in your life to be obsessed with to get past what's in your way? Sometimes we don't think about problems until they come up. But if you have that level of obsession towards something that you know you need to accomplish, that's going to get you closer to making that a reality. Next point is acceptance. And one of my realities was, as I was starting to recover more and more physically, I had to come to grips that my normal was not going to be my new normal. That Malika was gone. That me and Cam had to figure out a way to move forward. Now, the funny thing is, I told you guys earlier that before we went on this trip, that Malika and I, we were both very busy. We were both traveling for work, and that when she was gone, I would be at home with our son, and we'd have a week or so together having to figure out how we were going to do life while she was gone. Well, didn't realize it at the time, but that was sort of preparing us for what that reality was. But in a sense, it made it harder for Cam because he was processing it as if mom was just gone on a work trip. And so he was in denial of the fact that things were going to have to be different. Physically, he could see me struggling, moving around. Emotionally, he was broken, I was broken too. But when you're holding on to things that aren't really the reality, it makes it difficult to move forward. Now, this is all part of the grieving process, and we go through things that we grieve. It's not just the loss of a close loved one. It can be when something changes with us personally. It could be a financial hardship that we run into. It could be a number of different things that once they trigger us, that we find ourselves needing to bounce back and recover from. But are you holding on to that? Or are you accepting that reality and able to look forward? I'll tell people that denial is the enemy of acceptance. And as soon as we can get ourselves out of that state of denial and accept what our reality is, then we can actually start making the transformation and the changes that we need to in order to figure out what our future looks like. So I'm going to ask you this. Think about it. What are you in denial of? And what do you need to accept that you haven't accepted yet to move forward? I had to work with my son. We had to start going to therapy and counseling so it would be easier for us to be able to get to that place of acceptance. But this was important, and this was critical for us to be able to move forward with life. But what are you not accepting that you know you need to accept? Help build that resilience and deal with the challenges in life. The next point that I want to talk about is discipline. What does it mean to be disciplined? Well, discipline comes with when you have to put yourself to keep doing things consistently, to do the work. Do the work. Do the work when you don't feel like it. There are definitely things that we have to do in life that we don't want to do. And we have our moods. We have our times where we are more energetic and our times where we don't feel like it. But what can you hold yourself accountable to? And what can you be disciplined towards? After I finally got to a place where I was walking again and I was starting to feel a little bit better about myself, I found myself where I was actually enjoying the workout and started doing these boot camps. I found myself waking up at 6:30 in the morning to go work out. And what started out as one day became 3 days. And before I knew it, I was doing this every day. And it had me feeling more positive and optimistic about myself and my chances of recovery. As you become more disciplined, you start realizing that routine can be your friend. The more that you're doing things on a consistent basis, the better you become at it. And as I was doing this, my walk started turning into a jog, and my jog started turning into a little bit of a run. And then my run started to where I was able to learn how to jump over boxes and do all these different things by being disciplined and consistent. Those things were allowing me to make these physical recoveries. But it isn't just from the physical standpoint. As I said before, my son and I, we were having to go through the therapy and the counseling to be able to get the thoughts out of our mind and put them on paper and make it real. We started journaling. And sometimes we have demons in our head, in our thoughts, that are holding us back, that prevent us from being able to take the progress that we need to move forward. But having that discipline to do it, like I said, when you don't want to do it, will get you so much further. It's all about building those right habits to overcome the challenges when they pop up in our life. It's all about being consistent about doing things when you really need to do it. And I tell you this, it's hard to look yourself in the mirror and say that I gave everything I could when I know I haven't been putting forth the effort on a consistent basis. So if you want to become more resilient, if you want to be able to move forward when the challenges and the obstacles and issues come up in your life, ask yourself, am I consistent? Am I disciplined? And in what areas of your life do you need to try to put more discipline towards? I'm sure we all have some area where we can point at and say, I am not doing it as consistently as I need to. But the sooner you can identify this and address it, the more resilient you become. Next, I want to talk about what motivation is. What is your why? Why are you doing what you need to do? I started thinking about this as I was going through this, the emotional battle. I was suffering from depression. I was suffering from anxiety. Remember, I told you guys, I picked the trip we went on, so I had survivor's remorse by realizing I was still here and that she wasn't. And there were times where I just wanted to throw in the towel. I wanted to quit. I didn't want to keep going. But I had to find what was going to get me up and keep me going that next day to keep trying to improve and get better. Tell you guys a funny story. This was actually about a year before Malika and I went on this trip. We were down in our basement and we were watching this movie. And in this movie, the main character suddenly died. And after we finished watching that movie, we started talking about it. And she asked me, Ty, what would we do if one of us passed away suddenly? And I asked her, what would you want me to do if you suddenly died? Now, this was just off of watching a movie. Nothing planned, nothing expected. Malika sat there for a second and thought. And after a second, she said, Ty, if something was to suddenly happen to me, I wouldn't want you to grieve for too long. I want you to go back out there and find happiness again. And then she paused for a second. And she gave me this list. And on this list were the names of 7 women that she said under no circumstances whatsoever. They better not call you. They better not come to our house. They better not be around my son. Them ain't my friends. And I was like, you playing, right? But after she said that, she told me that the one thing that I want you to do is to make sure you do everything you can to make sure that the only part of me that'll still be left on this earth is well taken care of. And that was our son, Cameron. So when I found myself struggling to figure out why I needed to get up, why I needed to get my mind right, why I needed to get back emotionally to where I needed to be, it was all because of him. I still had to be a dad. I had to be a mom and a dad. I had to figure out how to do certain things that I never thought I'd have to do. Hell, I didn't know how to put money in his lunch account, but I needed to figure out how to do those things. And if I didn't know how to do it, I needed to find the right help that would help me figure out how to do those things. So I don't know what your why is, but when you're struggling with what to do and how you're going to move forward, ask yourself, what is my source of motivation? What's going to get me out of bed and make me do the things that I need to do? Not necessarily the things that I want to do. The things that I want to do are easy. The things that I need to do is a lot harder to find that motivation and keep that motivation. The next letter on this roadmap here is your attitude. What is your attitude, your thoughts, your belief, how you look at yourself, how you look at the people around you? Ask yourself, we have more conversations in our own mind every day than we ever have with other people. A lot of times we struggle with approaching certain challenges and situations because we already have a nasty attitude towards it. What can you do in order to boost that attitude of yours? There are certain things in our lives that are going to happen. Some of them we have control over, and we need to have the right attitude towards those things. But others, are completely out of our control. And how are we going to handle those things? Are you going to approach it with a positive attitude? Are you going to realize that the challenges that come up are opportunities for growth, opportunities for you to become better? Are you going to figure out a way either to work around it or to get the right resources and the help to move through it? This is one of the things that I realized that I had to do. And, even in this broken state, I still had a smile on my face. I was still happy about what was going on. And one of the things that pushed me was the fact that as I was going through my physical recovery and I was starting to feel better and better about myself, I did start to let people get closer to me. I did start to have friends in my life who were trying to tell me that, okay, you can keep going, you can keep doing this. And I got a little ahead of myself one day. I was starting to, be happy about my physical recovery. I was, like I said, able to walk and jog a little bit. And I tried to put something on social media. And then one of my boys, he reached out to me and said, Ty, when are you going to start running 5Ks? I thought to myself, nah, I ain't trying to run no 5Ks. Look, I'm happy to walk. But then I thought about it, and I was like, this is a type of push and encouragement that I needed. And that negative attitude that I had towards doing that kept me from wanting to reach my fullest potential. And then that buddy of mine, he reached back out to me and said, nah, Ty, you coming out here with us. And even though I didn't want to, I found myself getting up and starting to run a little bit and a little bit more. And before I knew it, I started running 5Ks. I started learning how to swim with one leg. I started doing things because that confidence, that self-belief, that attitude is so critical when you want to move past what you perceive as an obstacle that you don't think you can get past. So I ask yourself, oh, these were just examples and pictures of me after running the 5Ks and stuff. So my question is, can you change your attitude and change your approach to the challenges in your life? The answer is yes. The question really is, are you willing to? Those with a positive attitude, those that are happy all the time, that is a wonderful thing, and keep being that way. But when we find resilience, when we find resistance, and we need to build that resilience within ourselves, one key characteristic of that is what is our attitude approaching the challenge. Keep that in mind. And then, as I get ready to round up with this, last thing I want to talk about with this roadmap is your process. What is a process? So I came from an engineering background, so I used to deal with processes all the time in manufacturing, making stuff, doing different things. But a process is a specific set of actions that take you from where you are to where you want to go to. Think about this. Everywhere you got in life, your mind got there first. So that means from wherever you are, you had to visualize it. You had to see it. You had to understand that this is my target. This is my destination. But the hard part that people run into is they don't understand what steps they need to take in order to get there. So if you want to be more resilient, you want to have clarity. You want to have focus on your approach and where you want to go to get there. And so I ask you this question. When it comes to understanding where we're going in life, are you just starting to just let life happen to you? Are you just going with the flow, going through the motions? When it comes to setting your goals and having the expectations in life that you really want, do you have a clear way of getting there? Sometimes we need help in order to help define that process for us. I had a life coach that I worked with to help me figure out how to put the pieces back together. I had my therapist to help me process the grief and figure out that there was a way that I could get past the heartbreak and move forward and learn how to love again. There are ways that we can move forward, but understand, if you take that moment to figure out what your process looks like, implementation becomes so much easier. And so I didn't think I would ever be speaking in front of people like this, but I started out being asked to speak on a whim, and it led to me actually doing it more and more. And before I knew it, I took all of these notes that I had journaled and all the feelings that I had from what I experienced, and it turned into a book, a best-selling book that got out there. And then, so now this has been my process, understanding that I had to go through these specific steps in order to get better at what I was becoming and what I was doing. And I ask you this, what is your process? Are you clear on what process you need to take in order to get the transformation that you desire? there is a way to get to where we want to get to. Far too often, we let the perception of the obstacles stop us from getting started. But understand that when you have resilience, you're able to find ways to define your process to get to the purpose and get to the place where you belong. So with this, I'm going to come to an end, but I want to remind you this. What is resilience? I look at resilience this way. Things are going to happen to us. We're going to have adversity in our life. It's not the adversity, but it's your reaction to that adversity that determines where you're going to go. And as I said before, resilience is not about regaining what was lost. The sooner we get to that point of acceptance of that, the better off we are. But it's really about reshaping what remains. And it's what you do with what still remains that's going to dictate how your life goes moving forward. With that, share with you guys a little bit about myself. My name is Tyran Jackson, and I am a life coach, I'm a speaker, and I help those who are going through traumas, tragedies, transitions in life make the transformations they need to be triumphant. My platform is called Reborn Resilient because I embody resilience. Being able to bounce back from everything that happened to me was something that I never would have imagined. But ask yourself, if he can go through that and overcome and be in front of me right now talking, what is it that I'm allowing myself to keep me from being able to move forward and do what I need to do? I appreciate you for being open to listening to this. And I talk about resilience all the time. This is just the surface of it. But hopefully this story has touched, motivated, and inspired you to go out and be the best version of yourself. With that, as I said, my name is Tyran Jackson. I thank you and I appreciate you. And hopefully you got something you can take away that you can apply in your life today to be a more resilient person tomorrow. Thank you for your time. Oh, thank you, Penny. Yes.
Thank you very much, Tyron. Why is it so loud? Yes, so we wanted to give you guys an opportunity to also not only hear from him, but ask him a few questions about, some quick takeaways that you wanted, if you wanted a little bit more explanation about the roadmap.